The forest was too quiet, too still, like even the wind was holding its breath. Jace walked slowly through the thick alien jungle, his boots crunching over broken bones and twisted roots. His hand stayed on the hilt of his plasma sword, ready for whatever came next. This place was called the Cradle of Monsters, and it deserved the name. Everyone knew the stories. Anyone who entered here never came back. Even the strongest alien warriors avoided it. But Jace was not from this world. He was human. He had come looking for a missing scout team, but now he knew they were long dead. Their ship was torn apart, blood everywhere, only weapons left behind. The ground smelled of rot, and strange growls echoed in the trees. Then he heard it, a scream, high and sharp, not from an animal. It was a child, maybe two. The sound of fear was so strong it froze his blood. But he didn't turn away. He ran toward the sound, faster, deeper into the jungle. The trees bent like claws, the fog grew thick, and strange eyes glowed in the shadows. But the scream came again, louder this time, mixed with cries and sobs. He burst through a wall of vines and slid down a slope of wet earth. There at the bottom was a scene that stopped him cold. Two small alien children winds were trapped under broken debris, pieces of what looked like a fallen transport ship. Their skin was pale blue and glowing softly, and their eyes wide with terror. All around them were monsters. Jace had never seen creatures like this before. Long necks, teeth like knives, bodies like twisted wolves. Dozens of them circled the children. Hissing, waiting, their claws digging into the ground. Jace didn't think. He roared and jumped in. His plasma sword lit up the night. The first swing sliced through a monster's neck. The creatures shrieked and attacked, but Jace fought like a storm. Every time one beast fell, two more came. Blood sprayed, claws slashed his armor. One cut deep across his shoulder, but he didn't stop. He placed himself between the children and the monsters, shouting at them to stay down. The girl twin cried and held her brother, who was bleeding from a cut on his leg. "Don't move," Jace said without turning, his sword flashing in every direction. "I won't let them touch you." More came from the trees, climbing over the rocks. Jace fought harder. But he was one man against a swarm. He screamed in rage, his voice echoing across the jungle. He killed with fury. Not for glory, but because these children were helpless. Because no one else would save them. His armor cracked, his blood mixed with the monsters. The battle seemed endless. He didn't know how long he'd been fighting. Minutes? Hours. His arms ached, his vision blurred, but the children still lived. He finally managed to pull the debris off them. Lifting the heavy metal with shaking hands, "Run behind me," he shouted. "Don't look back." They moved, crawling, limping. As Jace stood like a wall of fire between them and death, by the time the sun started to rise. The ground was covered in bodies, more than 100, maybe 2. And still more kept coming. Jace was wounded, bleeding from everywhere. His sword was nearly drained of energy. His knees buckled, but he didn't fall. He looked at the children, who were hiding behind a rock, staring at him with tears and wonder, and then silence. The monsters suddenly stopped. Every one of them froze and backed away, growling low. Something was coming. Jace turned slowly, sword ready, but what stepped? Out of the mist wasn't a beast. It was a figure tall, armored, glowing with power. A woman? Her face was sharp and fierce, her eyes golden fire. Her armor shimmered like liquid stone. Blades rested on both her hips. Her presence made even the monsters shrink back into the forest. She saw the dead creatures, saw the blood, and then she saw her children. The girl cried, "Mama," and ran to her, the boy limping behind. The warrior woman caught them both in her arms, holding them tight. Her gaze lifted to Jace, who was breathing hard, covered in blood. For a moment, no one spoke. The jungle was silent again. Then she stepped forward, slowly, eyes locked on his. Her voice was soft but deadly. "Who are you?" Jace swayed, almost collapsing, just a guy who couldn't walk away. And then everything went black. Jace didn't wake up right away. His body had shut down from exhaustion, pain, and blood loss. His mind floated somewhere between dreams and fire. In that darkness, he heard voices, soft ones, worried ones, alien words mixed with the cries of children. When his eyes opened, he didn't know how much time had passed. But his chest burned, his arm was numb, and the taste of metal filled his mouth. He sat up with effort and looked around. He wasn't in the jungle anymore. He was inside some kind of alien healing tent walls glowing with a soft green light. Strange machines quietly humming nearby. His armor had been removed. His wounds cleaned and covered in bandages that pulsed like living fabric. A thick blanket covered him, but what truly caught his eye were the two little faces watching him from the corner, the alien twins. The girl was holding her brother's hand. Both of them had tear-streaked cheeks. When they saw him awake, they stood quickly. "You live," the girl whispered, then her lip trembled. "You saved us," Jace tried to speak, but his voice was dry. "Are you both okay?" he managed to say. The boy nodded, though his leg was still wrapped in something glowing. Before Jace could say more, the tent flap opened and she walked in. The queen, he recognized her from the forest. The warrior mother, the one who had sent the monsters running without saying a word. This time, she was not wearing full armor. Her long black hair was braided down her back, and her eyes no longer burned. They watched him calmly, but sharply. Like a predator measuring prey, she stepped close, her voice strong. "You killed 300 of them." Jace blinked. "That many?" She nodded slowly, then looked down at her children. "They say you never turned away." "I couldn't," Jace said, sitting straighter, though pain shot through his side. They were crying for help. And no one else was there. The queen didn't speak for a moment. She simply looked at the pile of weapons near the wall, Jace's sword, his broken knife, his burnt vest, the armor full of claw marks. Then she did something that made the twins gasp. She bent her knee, a warrior queen, feared across systems, bowed her head to a wounded human soldier. "Thank you," she said, "not as a ruler, but as a mother. You gave everything to protect my blood. I owe you a debt I cannot measure." Jace tried to smile. "I didn't do it for a reward." But she looked up at him with fire again. "And that is why your reward will change your life." Before he could ask what she meant, she stood tall again and spoke to the guards outside the tent in her language. They nodded and ran off. The twins came closer to Jace. The boy held his hand. The girl sat beside him. Her tiny voice asked, "Will you stay with us?" Jace looked into her big eyes, and something in his heart ached. He had lost his own family long ago, but something about these children made him feel like maybe he was meant to find them before he could answer. A loud voice echoed from outside the tent. A soldier cried, "They are here." The queen's eyes narrowed. She turned quickly and stepped out. Jace rose to his feet slowly, still weak, but his warrior instincts kicking in again. Outside, dozens of aliens had gathered, noble warriors, council members, high-ranking commanders. They had come in response to the queen's urgent summons. But none knew why she had called. She raised a hand and spoke clearly. "This man fought through the night to protect my heirs. He stood alone against the cradle, and he did not fall." The crowd murmured in shock. She turned to Jace, motioned him forward, and said, "As queen, I offer you anything you desire." Jace looked around, confused. "I didn't come here for that," he said again, but she shook her head. "You have shown strength, honor, and heart qualities even my own warriors lack," she said. "So now you must choose." Jace was silent for a moment. The twins were beside him, one holding his hand, the other leaning against his leg. He looked at them, then at the queen. "I only ask for this," he said. "Let me make sure they stay safe." A silence followed, heavy and deep. Then the queen smiled a real smile, not cold or regal, but soft and grateful. "Then you will have a place here," she said, "not as a guest, but as family." And just like that, the crowd's murmur turned into something else: confusion, disbelief, and whispers of something forbidden. A human, accepted by the queen herself. But Jace didn't care about the stares. The children held on to him like he was their shield, and in his heart, he knew he wasn't leaving. Not now, not ever. Jace expected the mother of the twins to be quiet, maybe soft-spoken, or like most alien mothers he had met before, gentle and kind. But Queen Soria was none of those things. She stood in front of her army like a mountain, tall and cold. Her golden eyes scanned every warrior as if she knew all their secrets. She gave orders with a single glance, act, and her words made even the strongest fighters lower their heads. When she looked at Jace, it was like being judged by fire. But then something changed. She walked past her soldiers and stood in front of him. She didn't bow this time. She didn't smile either. Instead, she handed him something, a small necklace, made of dark crystal and sharp silver thread. "What's this?" Jace asked, taking it slowly. "It is a mark," she said. "Not of ownership, but of honor." Jace looked at the strange necklace, then back at her. "I don't want to be worshipped," he said. "I just did what anyone should have done." Soria stepped closer, her voice lower now. "Then why did no one else do it?" He had no answer. The twins stood behind him, peeking around his side like he was their shield now. They didn't understand the tension in the air, but they understood this human made them feel safe. One of the soldiers, tall, armored, and clearly angry, stepped forward. He growled, "A human can't wear the blood chain of the crown. It's meant for warriors of this world." Jace didn't move. He just stood there, quiet but calm. But the queen's voice rang out sharp. "He fought more monsters in one night than you have in your whole career," the soldier growled. "He's not one of us." The queen's eyes narrowed. "He saved what I love most. Does that not make him more than one of us?" Silence followed. The soldier backed down, bowing his head. Later that day, Jace was taken to a private chamber. It was not a cell, but not exactly a guest room either. Everything inside was made of crystal and metal, glowing with soft light. But he couldn't rest. He kept thinking about the monsters, the children, the queen. He remembered how many creatures he had fought, remembered how small the twins had looked. He thought about how they had held his hands, how the girl whispered, "Don't leave us," before he slept. Then the door opened. Soria stepped inside. This time with no armor, no weapons. Just her long silver robe and a faint expression that wasn't anger. She sat across from him, quiet for a while. Then she finally said, "You remind me of someone." "Who?" Jace asked. "My mate," she replied. "Their father." Jace looked down, not knowing what to say. He was brave. She continued, "Strong. But he died protecting our people. I never thought I would see such courage again." "I'm not a hero," Jace muttered. "No," she agreed. "But you're something better, selfless." The room went quiet again. "I don't want power," Jace said at last. "I just want to know they'll be okay." "They will be," she said. "Because you are here now." Then she stood and left without another word. That night, Jace couldn't sleep. He walked outside and looked up at the alien sky. 2 moons hung above, stars spinning like silver dust. The girl came out quietly and sat beside him. "Mama never talks to anyone like she talks to you," she said softly. Jace smiled a little. "She's strong." "She was sad," the girl whispered. "Since Papa died, she never smiled, not even for us. Jace felt something heavy in his chest. The boy soon joined them. Crawling into Jace's lap like it was natural, they sat together under the stars. Silent but safe, and from a hidden place nearby, Queen Soria watched. Her hand was over her heart. And for the first time in years, her eyes were wet. She didn't know what this human had done to her. He hadn't fought for glory, hadn't asked for riches, hadn't demanded anything. But in one bloody night, he had changed everything. And soon, she would offer him more. Then a reward, she would offer him a future. Jace woke up to soft light spilling through the crystal walls. The healing tent was quiet. But the warmth of two small bodies beside him reminded him he wasn't alone. The twins had fallen asleep, curled up against his chest during the night. He didn't want to move. Not because he was tired, but because this was peace, after everything. After blood and monsters, this was the moment he didn't expect. But peace never lasted long here. A soft chime echoed through the tent. Then the queen entered without her usual armor. She wore a flowing black robe, her hair tied behind her head in a thick braid. The guards outside bowed as she passed, but she didn't look at them. Her eyes stayed on Jace. "The council waits," she said simply. "You must come." Jace carefully lifted the twins and laid them on a soft fur mat. He followed her outside, ignoring the pain in his side. The entire city, or maybe palace, was made of sharp, silver-like stone and glowing blue trees. Warriors stood tall as they watched the human pass, some with anger, some with fear. They had never seen a Terran like this before. In the council hall, high-ranking aliens sat in a circle. They wore armor with family crests and faces carved from stone. They turned to Jace as he entered, and many didn't hide their frowns. But Queen Soria raised her hand and spoke first. "This is the man who stood against the cradle of monsters alone." A low murmur echoed across the hall. "He saved my heirs. Risked his life, asked for nothing," she continued. "So I offer him a reward of his choosing." One of the counselors grunted. "Gold, ships, a private moon." "Just say the word human," another added. "You can ask for land, power, even a command post in our army." Jace didn't speak right away. He looked around slowly, eyes meeting the counselors. Then, settling on the queen, he stepped forward and said in a calm voice, "I only want one thing." The room went silent. He looked up, his voice stronger now. "Let me stay with them. The twins. Let me protect them. Grow beside them. That's all." The silence deepened. Some eyes widened. Others narrowed. It was not the answer anyone expected. "You want to raise them." One counselor asked, "You are not of our blood." "I don't care," Jace replied. "They're just kids. They deserve someone who will never run away." "I won't run," another counselor scoffed. "That is not a reward. That is a burden." But Queen Soria stepped forward slowly, her voice steady, and yet, "He asks for it freely." She turned to Jace and said, "You could have had anything." Jace gave a small smile. "I don't need anything else." Soria didn't speak for a while. Then she said to the council, "Let it be recorded, the human Jace has chosen his reward-bonded guardianship over the heirs of my bloodline." More whispers, more tension. Then she added something that shook the room. "And he shall not do it as an outsider." Every eye turned to her again. "I name him Lifebound," she said, her voice echoing, "not by law, but by vow." The chamber burst into chaos. One elder stood up shouting, "That's forbidden. He's not of our race, not even of this world." But she did not back down. "He gave more than any of you ever would, and I trust him more than half this council." Jace was stunned. "Wait. What does Lifebound mean?" Soria looked at him, not with fire this time, but something softer. "It means your soul is tied to mine, by blood oath, by care, by duty." Jace blinked. "Like married?" She nodded slowly. Yes. In your language, that. And more. His heart raced. He didn't ask for this, didn't expect it. But when he looked down, the twins were standing there, holding his hands, looking up at him with bright, innocent hope. And he realized he didn't feel fear. He felt like he had already chosen this, long before it was ever offered. He gave a slow nod, then, accept, and. In that moment, everything changed, not just for him, but for the entire planet. The warrior queen had offered a bond to a humans, something no one thought possible. And he didn't take it for power or riches. He took it for love. Jace stood frozen, not because he was afraid, but because everything felt too big, too strange, too fast. He had fought monsters, nearly died, saved the twins. And now he was bound by oath to the queen of an alien world. And yet, when she looked at him, she didn't look like a ruler. She looked like a woman who had carried too much weight for too long. Soria turned to her guards, prepared the life-bound chamber. She said, her voice calm but firm, "He will be honored tonight." Jace barely had time to ask what that meant before he was taken away by two attendants. They led him through silver halls, glowing with soft blue light. Everything smelled of flowers and metal. He was cleaned, dressed in fine alien robes, woven black and silver, cut to fit his body perfectly. His wounds still ached, but the strange healing tech stitched them quietly under his skin. When he saw himself in the mirror, he hardly recognized the man staring back. The human soldier who once wandered battlefields now looked like a prince. But the expression in his eyes was the same, tired, unsure, searching. Then the doors opened, and everything stopped. The room was vast, circular, glowing with firelight. From torches floating mid-air, hundreds of aliens stood in silence, dressed in royal clothing, their eyes locked on Jace as he entered. At the far end stood Queen Soria. She wore a flowing gown of dark red and gold, her hair woven with strands of metal and jewels. Her weapons were gone. Her hands were bare. For the first time, she looked soft, almost vulnerable. As he walked slowly toward her, the whispers began to low to understand. But heavy with meaning, when he stood before her, she lifted a glowing chain and placed it around his neck. "This is the bond," she said, "not of control, not of command, but of choice." Jace looked at her and said honestly, "I never wanted to belong to anyone." Soria smiled gently. "Then don't," she replied. "Just walk beside me." Then she spoke in her native language, loud enough for all to hear. "Let it be known," she said. "The human who saved my children is no longer a stranger. He is no longer an outsider. He is mine." A wave of shock spread across the crowd. Some bowed, others turned away. But none dared to protest. Jace didn't understand the full weight of what had just happened. But when the twins ran out from behind the throne and hugged his legs, he knew one thing. Clearly, he belonged here now. The ceremony ended, and the guests slowly began to leave. Only a few remained, close advisors, personal guards. A few silent elders who watched everything without speaking. Soria motioned for Jace to follow her into a quiet chamber behind the throne. It was small, warm, lit with soft lights, and gentle perfume in the air. There was no crown here, no throne, no guards, only her and him. She sat on a curved bench and looked up at him. Her voice was softer than ever. "Do you understand what this means?" Jace shrugged. "Kind of." Soria gave a small laugh, short but real. "You're life-bound to me now. That means my people will watch your every move. They'll judge you, test you, challenge you," she said. "Some will hate you for being human." Jace sat beside her. "And what about you?" She turned to him, her golden eyes glowing in the light. "I don't care what they think," she said. "I chose you because you saved the only part of me that still mattered." Jace looked down at his hands, then back at her. "I didn't do it to impress you." "I know," she whispered. That's why it matters." Silence filled the room for a long moment. Then she said, quietly, "My reward was supposed to be for you." "Something you wanted?" Jace looked up. Confused? "What do you mean?" "Oh, she leaned closer, not with force, but with truth. "The real reward is not gold or land. Jace, it's this," she whispered. "A place, a bond, a home." And in that moment, it finally hit him. The reward he didn't expect was her, not just the queen, not just the title, but her. The woman who had lost a husband, nearly lost her children, and finally found someone who stood beside her not because of power or pride, but because he chose to. Jace didn't need to answer. He simply reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. The palace rose high over the cliffs, with towers that reached the clouds and lights that glowed like stars at night. But inside the royal walls, everything had changed. The guards still stood straight, the halls were still cold. But there was a warmth, now quiet, gentle, unexpected. It followed Jace wherever he went. Not because he was now the lifebound of Queen Soria, not because he had power. It followed him because of the twins. Every morning, they ran into his arms. Before he was even fully awake, the boy would hide under his robe during council meetings, and the girl insisted he braid her hair before breakfast. Soria watched it all silently. She had spent her life building walls around herself, walls made of duty, war, and silence. But Jace didn't break those walls. He just sat beside them until she opened the door. In the royal training yard, Jace taught the twins how to hold small practice blades. They weren't strong yet, but they laughed. They laughed like children again, not heirs to a throne soaked in blood. One afternoon, Soria stood in the shadows, watching him. He didn't act like a royal, didn't care about titles or traditions. He never asked for a crown or a seat of power. But somehow, everyone in the palace listened when he spoke. Later that evening, as the twin moons rose above the cliffs, Soria asked him to join her on the terrace. The wind was soft. The stars reflected in the lake below. "I was trained to kill," she said without looking at him before I was even old enough to speak. "I learned to survive, fight, lead." Jace stood beside her, saying nothing yet, just listening. "I lost my mate in a war that shouldn't have happened," she continued, "and after that, I lost myself too." Jace turned toward her. "But you kept going." Soria nodded slowly. "For them," she whispered, meaning the twins. "But it wasn't life. It was just surviving." She looked at him now, her voice steadier. "Then you came, battered, bloody, and still fighting to protect children who weren't even yours." "I didn't think," Jay said. "I just knew I couldn't let them die." "That's what made you different," she said. "Most warriors fight for pride, or orders, or power. You fought because it was right." They stood in silence again. "But it wasn't awkward," Jace finally said. "You don't have to carry everything alone anymore." Her eyes softened, the fire in them dimming into something warmer. "I don't know how to not be a warrior," she admitted. He smiled a little. "Then maybe it's time to learn how to be a mother again, too." Soria blinked, surprised by his words, not because they were wrong, but because they were true. She wasn't just a queen, not just a fighter. She was a mother, a woman, someone who had once laughed freely before the world made her a blade. The next day, she did something no one had seen in years. She sat on the floor with the twins, playing a board game from their childhood. She even let the little boy cheat, and when the girl called her out, she smiled an actual smile, not sharp, not forced. Jace saw it from the doorway and didn't interrupt. Instead, he walked outside and sat in the garden, watching the stars. Soria joined him later, sitting on the bench beside him without a word. After a while, she said softly, "You make them feel safe. You make me feel human." He looked at her and replied gently, "You always were." Their hands touched again. Not by accident this time, and neither one pulled away. From a balcony above, two small faces peeked down. Whispering and giggling, she's smiling. Again, the boy said, "She loves him," the girl whispered back. "I think he's already our dad." And maybe he was, not by blood, not by law, but by choice. Peace didn't last, not on this planet, not for someone like Queen Soria, and not for a human who had dared to stand beside her. The rebellion came without warning. It began with whispers, quiet voices in dark halls, warriors who refused to bow. To a human, counselors who called the life-bound oath a mistake. Others who feared the queen had grown weak because of her love. And then came the fire. Late at night, the sky lit up red as one of the outer towers exploded. Screams filled the air. Guards rushed through the halls. The scent of smoke wrapped around the palace like a ghost. Jace woke instantly, the twins crying beside him. He didn't wait. He grabbed them both, held them close, and ran down the glowing halls. Soria met him halfway. Armor already on, blades at her sides. Her voice was sharp but calm. "The Eastern Wing has fallen. It's the High Generals. They've turned against us." Jace gave her the twins. "Keep them safe," he said. But she shook her head. "We keep them safe," she replied. Together, the guards tried to split them apart. Tried to drag the children away to the safe vaults beneath the palace, but the twins screamed, clinging to Jace and their mother. So they stayed together, a broken family forged in fire, standing in the heart of a palace under attack. The traitors stormed the throne room, and waiting for them was Jace. He didn't wear royal armor, didn't carry fancy alien weapons, just his cracked Terran vest, his old blade, and the fury of a man who had found something worth protecting. He stood at the front, while Soria flanked him, her blades glowing. "You still fight for them?" The lead traitor growled. "You're not even one of us." Jace raised his sword, his voice steady. "I don't need to be," the enemy laughed. "She is no longer fit to rule. She kneels to a human." But Soria stepped forward and said, "No, I chose a human who would never kneel." And with that, the battle began. Jace moved like a storm. He didn't fight with elegance. He fought with purpose, fury, and heart. Every time a blade came near the twins, he was there. Soria fought like a legend, spinning between attackers. Her movements like fire dancing across steel. They fought back to back, not like ruler and consort, but like equals. And when the last traitor fell, gasping in disbelief that a human had bested him, Jace stood tall over his body and whispered, "Don't ever touch my family." The hall was stained in blood and silence. More soldiers entered, but this time they dropped their weapons. They knelt not to a crown, but to the strength they had just witnessed. Later, as the fires were put out and the palace walls repaired, the queen stood before the people, the twins on either side of her, and Jace beside them all. "He stood when others ran," she declared. "He fought when others betrayed. He loved when others hated. I do not need to explain why I chose him." She said, "You have seen it with your own eyes," and so it was done. Jace wasn't just the queen's lifebound anymore. He was protector of the heirs, shield of the people, a warrior of legend, despite being human. But to the twins, he was simply dad, that night. As the stars returned to the sky and the smoke faded from the palace, the little girl climbed onto Jace's lap and curled up quietly. "You didn't leave," she whispered. "I never will," he promised. Soria stood nearby, watching them, her eyes soft, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from something she hadn't felt in years. Safety. She joined them, sat beside him, and rested her head on his shoulder for the first time. No crown, no armor, just a mother, just a woman. And beside her, a man who had crossed galaxies, fought monsters, and killed 300 beasts, not for gold or glory, but because two children screamed and he chose to listen. That was the moment everything changed. And from that night on, the palace never felt cold again.